The mahogany conference table seemed to stretch endlessly before me as I sat listening to the will reading. Michael, my older brother, lounged in our father's old chair at the head of the table, already playing the role of CEO before the papers were even signed. And to my daughter, Catherine, the lawyer Reed, adjusting his glasses, I leave the marketing division of Chen Industries, along with my sincere hopes that she will continue to grow it as she has these past 5 years. I kept my face carefully neutral, though my hands clenched in my lap. 5 years of expanding the marketing division into a powerhouse that generated 40% of the company's revenue, and this was my inheritance. And to my son, Michael, the lawyer continued, I leave controlling interest in Chen Industries, including all assets, properties, and patents, with full executive authority effective immediately. Michael's smile widened. He'd been practicing that smile since we were kids, the one that said, I win, without saying a word. My name is Catherine Chen, and at 34, I thought I understood family dynamics. But watching my brother take control of everything our father had built, everything I'd helped grow, I realized I'd underestimated just how far sibling rivalry could go. If there are no questions, the lawyer said, gathering his papers, I'll file these with the court today. Actually, I said, speaking for the first time since the reading began, I'd like to see the original will, the one from before Dad's revision. Michael's smile flickered slightly. That's irrelevant, Cat. This is the current will. But the lawyer was already pulling out another document. It's within Ms. Chen's rights to review the previous version. I took the old will, dated just 2 weeks before our father's death, before Michael had somehow convinced him to change everything during those final morphine haze to gaze. Thank you, I said, scanning the pages I'd already memorized. I'd like copies of both versions, please. Planning to contest? Michael asked, his tone sharp despite his maintained smile. I met his gaze steadily. Just being thorough. Dad taught us that, remember? What Michael didn't know was that our father had taught me more than just business thoroughness. He taught me to plan ahead, to see the bigger picture, and to always keep an ace up my sleeve. The drive back to my office in the marketing division was tense with memories. Every corner of Chen Industries held echoes of my father, his vision, his integrity, his belief in building something that would last. Sarah, my assistant and closest friend, was waiting in my office. How bad was it? Exactly as we expected, I said, setting down my briefcase. Michael gets everything except marketing. She frowned. But your father promised. He always said you chair leadership. He did. Until Michael got to him at the end. I pulled out my laptop, typing in a complex password. But Dad wasn't as out of it as Michael thought. Remember that project he had me working on last year? The one Michael knew nothing about. Sarah's eyes widened. Project Phoenix? I nodded, opening an encrypted folder. Look at this. The screen showed a series of patents, groundbreaking technology that would revolutionize our industry. Patents that weren't listed in either version of the will because they weren't technically part of Chen Industries. Your father transferred these to you personally, Sarah breathed, scrolling through the documents. Before he got sick. And here's the best part, I said, pulling up another file. The marketing division he left me? It's not just marketing anymore. 3 months ago, Dad restructured it as an independent subsidiary, with its own board, its own assets, and full rights to develop these patents. Does Michael know? I thought about my brother's smug smile during the will reading. No, he never paid attention to the boring administrative details. He just saw the marketing division as my little pet project. Sarah sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. So while he thinks he's won everything, he's actually given me exactly what I need to build something bigger. I closed the laptop carefully. But first, we need to understand exactly what he did to make Dad change that will. The next few weeks were a careful dance of investigation and pretense. I played the part of the dutiful sister, attending board meetings where Michael made sweeping changes to our father's carefully built company. I watched as he installed his own people in key positions, pushed out longtime employees, and started dismantling the ethical guidelines our father had established. But all the while, I was gathering evidence. Security footage from the hospital during Dad's final days. Witness statements from nurses who'd seen Michael pressuring our father when he was heavily medicated. And most importantly, documentation of the systematic way Michael had been undermining the company for years, setting himself up to take control. Look at this, Sarah said one evening, pointing to a series of financial transactions. He's been funneling company resources into his own projects for years. Shell companies, hidden accounts. I studied the numbers, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. Dad knew. That's why he set all this up. He knew Michael would try to take everything. But why not just stop him? Cut him out completely. I thought about my father's face the last time we really talked, 3 days before Michael showed up with a new will. Because he was trying to protect both his children, in his own way. He gave Michael the company he thought he wanted, and gave me the tools to build something better. A knock at my office door made us both jump. Lisa from accounting stood there, looking nervous. "Ms. Chen, there's something you need to see." She handed me a flash drive with trembling hands. "I found these records. Mr. Michael asked me to clean up some old accounts, but this isn't right." The drive contained proof of something even worse than we'd suspected. Michael hadn't just been stealing from the company. He'd been actively sabotaging projects, ensuring that only his initiatives succeeded while others mysteriously failed. "How long has this been going on?" I asked quietly. "Years," Lisa whispered. "Since before your father got sick." I think that's why he got sick. The stress of discovering what Michael was doing. The pieces clicked into place. Dad's sudden decline, his mysterious symptoms that had baffled the doctors. The way Michael had insisted on controlling his medical care at the end. "Thank you, Lisa," I said, securing the flash drive in my safe. "I know how risky it was to bring this to me." She straightened her shoulders. "Your father was good to all of us. He deserved better than this." That night, as I sat in my father's old study, the one room Michael hadn't dared change yet, I found one final message. It was hidden in an old photo album, tucked behind a picture of our whole family from happier days. "Catherine," the note read in my father's shaky handwriting, "if you're reading this, then everything has happened as I feared it would. Michael has chosen his path. But you have always seen the bigger picture. The patents are your foundation. Build something worthy of them. And remember, sometimes the greatest victory comes from letting others think they've won. Love, Dad." I touched the words gently, feeling the imprint of his pen strokes. "I understand now, Dad," I whispered. "And I won't let you down." 3 months after the will reading, I sat in my office reviewing financial reports. Michael had been busy, systematically stripping Chen Industries of everything that had made it special. But he'd left me alone in my little marketing division, exactly as Dad had predicted. "You need to see this," Sarah said, bursting into my office. She laid a tablet in front of me, showing a news article from our main competitor, Apex Technologies. "Chen Industries announces major restructuring," the headline read. Below was a photo of Michael shaking hands with James Preston, Apex's notorious CEO. "He's selling off our core divisions," Sarah said, scrolling through the article. "Everything except marketing, which he probably thinks is worthless." I smiled slightly. "Did you notice the date of the announcement?" "Next Thursday." "Why?" "Because that's exactly when we'll be ready to launch." I turned my laptop around, showing her the project I'd been working on for months. Dad's patents aren't just revolutionary, they're game changers. And thanks to Michael's negligence, we've been developing them right under his nose. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. While Michael was busy dismantling our father's legacy, I was building something new. The marketing division, now secretly restructured as Phoenix Technologies, was ready to emerge from the ashes of what Michael thought he'd destroyed. The morning of Michael's big announcement, I arrived early at Chen Industries headquarters. The lobby was buzzing with nervous employees. Everyone had heard rumors about the Apex deal. "Kat," Michael called, spotting me by the elevators. "Here to watch the fireworks?" I adjusted my blazer carefully, wouldn't miss it. The conference room was packed with board members, executives, and press. Michael stood at the podium, practically glowing with self-importance. "Today marks a new chapter for Chen Industries," he began. "Our partnership with Apex Technologies will streamline operations and maximize shareholder value." I tuned out his corporate doublespeak, watching the faces in the room. Some looked resigned, others worried. A few, the ones Michael had brought in, looked smugly satisfied. "And now," Michael continued, "I'd like to introduce James Preston, CEO of Apex Technologies." Preston approached the podium, his expensive suit failing to hide his predatory nature. "Thank you, Michael. This merger represents Excuse me, I interrupted, standing. Before we continue, I have an announcement of my own. Michael's smile tightened. Kat, this isn't the time. Actually, it's exactly the time. I nodded to Sarah, who started distributing folders to everyone in the room. As CEO of Phoenix Technologies, formerly known as Chen Industries Marketing Division, I'm pleased to announce our own major development. The room erupted in murmurs as people opened the folders, revealing details of our new technology and its potential impact on the industry. These patents, Preston said, flipping through the pages with growing alarm. They're revolutionary, but they belong to Chen Industries. No, I cut in. They belong to Phoenix Technologies. My father transferred them to me personally before his death, along with full development rights. Michael's face had gone from red to white. That's impossible. I have controlling interest in all Chen Industries' intellectual property. In all intellectual property listed in Dad's will, I corrected him. These patents were transferred months before to what everyone thought was just the marketing division, a division you never bothered to properly investigate before making deals with Apex. I turned to address the room directly. While my brother was busy dismantling everything our father built, we were building something new. Something that will make the technology Apex wants to buy obsolete before the ink dries on their contract. The press was frantically taking notes. Board members were whispering among themselves. Preston was already on his phone, likely calling his lawyers. You can't do this, Michael hissed, grabbing my arm. I'm in charge here. Actually, I said, removing his hand. You're in charge of whatever's left of Chen Industries after your mismanagement comes to light. I gestured to Sarah, who started distributing a second set of folders. These documents show years of financial manipulation, project sabotage, and corporate theft, all under your leadership. The room fell silent as people began reading the evidence. Years of Michael's schemes, carefully documented and verified. And that's not all, I continued, my voice carrying in the silence. We also have evidence suggesting your involvement in Dad's sudden decline. The doctors are very interested in reviewing his medical records, especially the changes you made to his medication in those final days. Michael lunged for me, but my security, was faster. As they escorted him from the room, I could hear him shouting about betrayal and family loyalty. Preston tried to slip out quietly, but I called after him. Mr. Preston, you might want to hold off on any stock purchases. Things are about to get interesting. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of investigations, revelations, and restructuring. Michael was placed on administrative leave pending a criminal investigation. Apex Technologies withdrew their takeover bid, and Chen Industries' board of directors was in chaos. I watched it all unfold from my office at Phoenix Technologies, where we were preparing for our own public launch. The FBI wants to interview you again, Sarah said, bringing in my morning coffee. They have more questions about Michael's financial records. I nodded, reviewing the latest prototype reports. Our first product using Dad's patents was exceeding all expectations. Schedule it for tomorrow. And get Lisa from accounting in here. She deserves recognition for coming forward with evidence. A knock at my door interrupted us. It was Janet Chen, my father's sister and longtime board member at Chen Industries. Catherine, she said, closing the door behind her. We need to talk about the company. I gestured for her to sit. Aunt Janet had always been the family peacekeeper, trying to mediate between Michael and me even when we were kids. The board met this morning, she continued. With Michael's situation and the evidence of his mismanagement, they voted to remove him as CEO. They want you to take over Chen Industries. I sat back, thinking about my father's note. Sometimes the greatest victory comes from letting others think they've won. No, I said quietly. Janet blinked. No. But Catherine, this is what you've wanted, what you deserved. The company should have been yours from the start. Chen Industries was Dad's dream, I explained. And Michael corrupted it. But Phoenix, I gestured to the prototype designs on my desk. This is something new. Something built on Dad's principles but free from the past's shadows. The board won't accept this. The shareholders will be very interested in the partnership I'm about to propose. I pulled out a document I'd been preparing. Phoenix Technologies wants to work with Chen Industries as equals. We'll license our patents, collaborate on development, but remain independent entities. Janet studied the proposal, her expression thoughtful. You're not just protecting your father's legacy, she said finally. You're building your own. Exactly. And in doing so, I'm honoring what Dad really wanted for both his children to find their own path. The news of Michael's arrest broke the next morning. The evidence was overwhelming: years of financial fraud, corporate espionage, and most damning of all, medical records showing he deliberately manipulated our father's medication to keep him confused and compliant during those final days. I visited him once in jail before his trial. He sat across from me in an orange jumpsuit, his arrogance finally stripped away. Why? I asked simply. He stared at his hands. I had to prove I could run the company better than you. Dad always favored you, his brilliant daughter who understood the business like he did. I was just there. Dad loved us both, I said. He tried to protect us both in his way. You just couldn't see it. And now you've won, he said bitterly. Got everything you wanted. I stood to leave. No, Michael. I built something of my own. That's what Dad was trying to teach us all along. 6 months later, I stood on a stage at the Phoenix Technologies launch event. Our first product, a revolutionary clean energy system based on Dad's patents, was being unveiled to overwhelming acclaim. In the front row sat Aunt Janet, along with key members of both Phoenix and Chen Industries boards. The partnership between the companies had already led to groundbreaking developments. My father, I told the audience, believed that true success wasn't about winning at all costs. It was about building something meaningful, something that makes the world better. Today, we honor that belief. Later that evening, I visited Dad's grave, placing fresh flowers beside his headstone. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of changing seasons. You were right, I said softly, about everything. Michael choosing his path, about me needing to find my own way. I understand now why you set things up the way you did. I placed a small model of our first Phoenix product beside the flowers. It incorporated all of his best ideas while adding something new, exactly as he taught me to do. Sarah found me there as the sun was setting, the boards waiting for our final approval on the expansion plans. I touched Dad's headstone one last time. What do you think he'd say about all this? She smiled. I think he'd say his daughter built something worthy of his legacy and then surpassed it. Walking back to my car, I thought about everything that had happened. Michael's betrayal had been painful, but it had freed me to create something new. Something that honored our father's principles while charting its own course. Phoenix Technologies wasn't just a company, it was proof that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to build something better than you imagined. Dad had known that all along. He'd given Michael the company he thought he wanted, and given me the tools to build something more. In the end, we'd both gotten exactly what we needed. As I drove home in the gathering dusk, I thought about that old photo album in Dad's study, the one with his final message. I'd moved it to my office at Phoenix, a reminder that some legacies aren't about what you inherit, but what you choose to build. And I was just getting started. I stared at the contract lying on our dining room table, my coffee growing cold beside it. James was still talking, gesturing excitedly about the beach house he'd already picked out in Malibu. But all I could focus on was his signature at the bottom of the page, right next to where he'd forged mine. This is going to change everything, Olivia, he said, reaching for my hand. No more 18-hour workdays, no more stress about funding rounds. We're set for life. My name is Olivia Chen, and at 36, I thought I knew my husband. We'd built quantum tech together from nothing, working out of our garage for 2 years before landing our first major client. Or at least, that's what James had always claimed. The truth was more complicated. When did you negotiate this deal? I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. My father had taught me that, always get all the facts before showing your hand. Last month, while you were in Seattle. James's smile faltered slightly. I know I should have told you, but with everything going on with your dad, I didn't want to add to your stress. My father had been dying of pancreatic cancer. I'd spent his last weeks by his side, holding his hand as he slipped away. Meanwhile, my husband had been secretly selling our company to our biggest competitor. $5 million seems low, I said, taking a sip of my now cold coffee, considering our latest valuation was $12 million. James waved dismissively. That valuation was optimistic. Besides, this is cash in hand, not theoretical value. And Global Tech is throwing in stock options too. I nodded slowly, thinking about the real documents locked in my home office safe. The ones that show I actually owned 75% of Quantum Tech, not the 30% James believed. The ownership structure had been my father's idea, his last gift to me, along with a warning I hadn't understood until now. Trust is good, he'd said, but control is better. Have you told the team yet? I asked, watching James's face carefully. Not yet. I thought we could announce it together at Monday's all-hands meeting. He grinned, clearly pleased with himself. Everyone's going to be thrilled. The severance packages are really generous. My stomach clenched. Severance packages? Well, yeah. He looked at me like I was being naive. Global Tech has their own development team. They're buying our technology, not our people. 47 people. That's how many employees had trusted us with their careers, had poured their hearts into building Quantum Tech. James was ready to throw them away without a second thought. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. I'm going for a walk. Don't be long, he called after me. We have dinner reservations at 7 to celebrate. Once outside, I pulled out my phone and called the one person who'd known about my father's suspicions. My best friend and Quantum Tech's lead counsel, Maya Rodriguez. He did it, I said as soon as she answered. He tried to sell the company. Maya's sharp intake of breath crackled through the speaker. Without board approval? Without your signature? He forged my signature on the contract. I'm looking at it right now. I sent her a photo of the document. Dad was right about everything. The offshore accounts too. I'm still gathering evidence, but probably. I discovered suspicious transfers to a Cayman Islands account 2 weeks ago. Money moving out of the company in small increments that added up to over $2 million. Okay, Maya said, her lawyer voice kicking in. Don't let him know you suspect anything. I'll call Judge Martinez and get an emergency injunction to block the sale. Then we need tow. She stopped suddenly, and I heard papers shuffling. Olivia, when did he say he negotiated this deal? Last month, while I was in Seattle with Dad. Why? Because I'm looking at his travel records right now. He wasn't meeting with Global Tech last month. He was in Cancun. My hand tightened around the phone. Cancun. With someone named Rebecca Palmer. Multiple hotel charges, dinner reservations for 2. Olivia, I'm so sorry. The pieces clicked into place. The late nights at the office, the mysterious business trips, the way he'd been pushing for this sale. This wasn't just about money. James was planning his exit, not just from the company, but from our marriage. Get me everything you can on Rebecca Palmer, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. And Maya? Thank you for having my back through all of this. Always, she replied firmly. No one steals my best friend's company and gets away with it. I ended the call and looked back at our house. The home we bought with my father's investment money, though James had always claimed it was from his savings. How many other lies had I believed? My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. 7 p.m., celebration dinner at Luciano's. I smiled grimly. Oh, we'd celebrate all right, just not the way James was expecting. Back inside, I found him in our bedroom, humming as he changed for dinner. Feel better? He asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Much, I said, watching his reflection. Actually, I had an idea. Why don't we announce the sale tonight? I could invite Maya and the other board members to join us at Luciano's. Make it a real celebration. James turned, his expression flickering briefly before settling into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The board? Honey, we don't need to involve them yet. This should be our moment. You're right, I conceded, picking up my phone. Though I should at least invite Maya. She's put so much work into the company. No, he said sharply, then caught himself. I mean, let's keep it just us tonight. We can tell everyone else tomorrow. I nodded, pretending not to notice how his hands shook slightly as he finished with his tie. Whatever you think is best. He had no idea that Maya was already setting things in motion, that by morning his carefully constructed plan would start unraveling thread by thread. Ready to go, he asked, holding out his hand. I took it, feeling the wedding ring that had once meant everything to me. Ready. Luciano's was exactly as pretentious as I remembered, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. James ordered an expensive bottle of champagne, beaming at me across the table like he'd just given me the world instead of trying to steal it. To our future, he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his, watching the bubbles rise. To getting what we deserve. My phone buzzed silently in my lap. A message from Maya. Emergency injunction granted. Sheriff will serve papers to Global Tech tonight. Also, you need to see what I found about Rebecca Palmer. Everything okay? James asked, noticing my expression. Perfect, I smiled, slipping the phone back into my purse. Just a work email. Soon you won't have to worry about those anymore, he said, reaching for my hand. We can travel, maybe buy a vacation home. I was thinking Cancun would be nice. I nearly choked on my champagne. Cancun? That's specific. I heard it's beautiful this time of year, he said smoothly, but I caught the slight tension in his jaw. You know what else is beautiful? I asked, keeping my tone light. The view from our company's new satellite office, the one you approved last week without consulting me. He froze momentarily. Oh, that? Just some preliminary paperwork. Nothing's final. Really? Because Maya showed me the lease agreement this morning. 3 years, $2 million. That's a big commitment for a company you're selling. James's smile faltered. I can explain. Let me guess. I cut in. It's not what it looks like. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and paled slightly. I need to take this, he said, standing abruptly. Business call. I watched him hurry toward the restaurant's entrance, then pulled out my own phone and opened the file Maya had just sent. There it was, proof that the satellite office wasn't for Quantum Tech at all. James had leased it under a new company name, Palmer Technologies, named after Rebecca Palmer, the woman he'd been meeting in Cancun. A few minutes later, James returned to the table, his face ashen. We need to go. Now. Everything okay? I asked innocently. What about dessert? Something's come up at the office, he said, already signaling for the check. A problem with the servers. I knew exactly what had come up. Global Tech's lawyers would have just received the injunction blocking the sale. James's perfectly planned exit strategy was beginning to crumble. The drive home was tense, with James making frantic phone calls while I pretended to check my email. In reality, I was watching a series of text updates from Maya. Global Tech CEO is furious. James' offshore accounts frozen. Rebecca Palmer's real identity confirmed. She's not just his mistress. That last message made me sit up straighter. Not just his mistress. I typed back. Maya's response came quickly. She's Global Tech's VP of Acquisitions. This wasn't just an affair. It was corporate espionage. The pieces were falling into place. James hadn't just been planning to leave me. He'd been working with our competitor to steal our company's technology. The sale was just a cover for transferring our intellectual property to Global Tech. As we pulled into our driveway, James was still on the phone, his voice rising in panic. What do you mean they got an injunction? Who could have? No, that's impossible. I have all the necessary signatures. I got out of the car and headed inside, leaving him to his crisis. In our home office, I opened the safe and pulled out the real company documents, the ones showing my majority ownership, the board resolutions James had never bothered to read carefully, and most importantly, the evidence of his fraud that I'd been gathering for months. What did you do? I turned to find James standing in the doorway, his face contorted with rage. What did I do? I repeated calmly. I protected my company, the company my father helped build that you tried to steal. Your company? He scoffed. I built Quantum Tech from nothing. You were just the money. Is that what you told Rebecca? I asked, watching his face pale. When you were meeting her in Cancun, planning how to sell our technology to Global Tech. He took a step forward, but I held up my hand. Before you say anything else, I continued, you should know that Maya has copies of everything. The forged documents, the offshore accounts, your meetings with Global Tech. Corporate espionage is a serious crime, James. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice shook slightly. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him, showing the surveillance photos of him and Rebecca in Cancun, the bank transfers, the secret communications with Global Tech. Did you really think my father would leave me unprotected? I asked quietly. He knew what you were, even before I did. That's why he made sure I had controlling interest in the company. James lunged for the laptop, but I was faster, stepping back as Maya and 2 police officers appeared in the doorway behind him. James Thompson, one of the officers, said, "You're under arrest for fraud and attempted corporate espionage." As they led him away in handcuffs, he kept looking back at me, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You're nothing without me." I watched from the window as the police car drove away, feeling strangely empty. The man I loved, the life I thought we built together. It had all been a carefully constructed lie. Maya touched my shoulder gently. "You okay?" I nodded, picking up the family photo from my desk, the last one taken before my father got sick. Dad tried to warn me about James. I should have listened sooner. "You listened when it mattered," she said firmly. "Now, want to hear what else I found about Rebecca Palmer and Global Tech? Because this goes deeper than we thought." The next morning, Quantum Tech's offices were buzzing with nervous energy. I called an emergency all-hands meeting, and now faced 47 anxious faces as I stood at the front of our main conference room. "By now, you've probably heard rumors," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Yes, James has been arrested. Yes, there was an attempted sale to Global Tech. But no, none of you are losing your jobs." The relief in the room was palpable, but I wasn't finished. "What you don't know is that for the past 6 months, James has been working with Global Tech to steal our technology. He tried to sell the company for less than half its value while transferring our core IP through backdoor channels." Maya stepped forward, pulling up a presentation on the screen behind me. "We've uncovered evidence of systematic corporate espionage," she explained. "James and Rebecca Palmer, Global Tech's VP of Acquisitions, created a shadow company to funnel our technology and client data to our competitors." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. These people had trusted James, had believed in his leadership. Finding out he'd betrayed not just me, but all of them, hit hard. "There's more," I continued once the noise died down. "We discovered that at least 3 other tech startups were targeted by the same scheme. Global Tech would identify promising companies, insert themselves through various means, usually romantic relationships with key executives, and then systematically strip the companies of their assets." I clicked to the next slide, showing the pattern of failed startups in Global Tech's wake. But they made one crucial mistake with us. They underestimated how many safeguards my father put in place before he died. The next few hours were a blur of questions, explanations, and reassurances. By the end of the day, our entire team knew the truth and, more importantly, understood their role in what came next. Because this wasn't just about saving Quantum Tech anymore. We had a chance to expose a corporate conspiracy that had destroyed dozens of smaller companies. That evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the evidence we gathered, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Chen?" a woman's voice said when I answered. "This is Rebecca Palmer. We need to talk." I put the call on speaker so Maya could hear. "I think your lawyers would advise against that, Ms. Palmer." "My lawyers don't know I'm calling," she replied, her voice tense. "Look, you have no idea what you're dealing with. This goes way beyond James or Global Tech." "Then enlighten me." She paused and I could hear traffic in the background. "Not over the phone. Meet me at the Riverside Park in an hour. Come alone." I looked at Maya, who was already shaking her head. "It's a trap," she mouthed. "Why should I trust you?" I asked Rebecca. "Because I have proof that your father's death wasn't natural," she said quietly. "The cancer diagnosis, it was engineered." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "What?" "1 hour. The bench by the fountain. Don't be late." The line went dead. Maya was already on her phone, calling her contacts in law enforcement. Within 30 minutes, we had plainclothes officers positioned throughout the park and a wire hidden under my jacket. Rebecca was already at the bench when I arrived, looking nothing like the polished executive from the surveillance photos. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her hair disheveled. "They're going to kill me," she said without preamble. "Once they realize I'm talking to you, I'm dead." "Who's they?" She pulled out a USB drive with shaking hands. "It's all here, the whole operation. Global Tech isn't just stealing technology. They're eliminating anyone who might expose them. Your father figured it out. That's why they had to move quickly with James." I felt sick. "Are you saying they murdered my father?" "They have people inside pharmaceutical companies, hospitals. They can make anything look natural." She pressed the USB drive into my hand. "James doesn't know the half of it. He thought this was just corporate espionage, but it's—" A sharp crack split the air. Rebecca's eyes went wide, then blank. She slumped forward as screams erupted around us. The next few hours were chaos. Police swarming the park, reporters gathering at the edges, Maya pulling strings to keep my name out of the immediate coverage. The USB drive contained everything: internal emails, financial records, medical documents. A conspiracy so vast it seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of Quantum Tech's team again, but this time with federal agents beside me. The investigation is ongoing, I explained, but arrests are being made. Global Tech's entire executive board, hospital administrators, even some government officials who helped cover it up. James had already pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for his testimony. He would serve time, but more importantly, he would help bring down the people who had murdered my father. Maya touched my arm gently. Ready for the press conference? I nodded, straightening my jacket. Outside, cameras waited to hear the story of how a small tech company had uncovered one of the biggest corporate conspiracies in recent history. But first, I had one stop to make. At my father's grave, I placed fresh flowers and the news article announcing Global Tech's downfall. "You tried to protect me," I whispered. "Now I'm finishing what you started." The company would recover. We'd already landed 3 major contracts from Global Tech's former clients. Our team was stronger than ever, united by what we'd overcome together. As for me, I was different now. Stronger, yes, but also more cautious. Trust, as my father had said, was good, but control and justice were better. The headlines would call it a story of corporate greed and betrayal, but for me, it was simpler than that. It was about a daughter finally understanding her father's last lesson, about a woman reclaiming her power, and about truth finally coming to light. James had tried to steal my company, but he'd given me something instead: the chance to expose a corruption that had cost lives, including my father's. Sometimes I realize the greatest victories come from our deepest losses, and sometimes justice wears many faces.